main deck, if you get that on turn 3, you can really, really crush an enemy Jund player because it is a grindy 1-for-1 matchup.
Yep. You see Alex taking a mulligan here. And the Jund matchups, I actually think the mirror match is fairly interesting because it is a rare mirror match where occasionally it's very much about leveraging your early advantages, killing someone very quickly with your early haymakers, and then also it has times where it plays out very slow, grindy, kind of a Thragtusk, Bonfire, Keswick Wolf Run oriented game about squeezing out value out of the expensive cards.
Yeah.
And sort of depending on the draws that each player has, the texture of the game can be very different from match to match, whereas a lot of mirror matches are very much about the same stuff all the time.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. In this match, like you were saying, there is one card, though, unchecked is game over, like we mentioned a lot during the earlier matches, and that's Olivia Volderen.
Yes.
If you have Olivia Volderen and the other Jund player doesn't, the game is over if you don't draw a removal spell. No creature can stick. You're stealing Huntmaster, you're stealing Thragtusk, you're stealing all the creatures, you're killing Garrux, you're killing everything in play, and you're dealing an absurd amount of damage. So that's the card. If I was a Jund player, I would protect that with every last ounce of my being there.
Yeah. So the matchup kind of goes through 2 phases where there's phase 1 where one person tries to get it ahead on the other person with usually mana and then threats on the board. Assuming we pass through that phase, then it becomes about drawing the most X spells, drawing the most Thragtusk. Olivia, that you mentioned, Keswick Wolf Run, the game becomes about who draws more meteor cards.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and it's usually a rock, paper, scissors here. A lot of cards trump a lot of cards. So if I'm on my early beatdown plan and you Miracle of Bonfire against a Huntmaster and a Life Main Zombie, you're looking pretty decent there. Yeah. Or especially if they result in Garruk and you get that huge Miracle that kills Garruk, all the creatures in play. So yeah, this can be very swingy. I would never count one Jund player out unless it's super dire.
Bonfire and Thragtusk and Rakdos Return give both players access to a lot of haymakers that can catch them up from losing positions.
Exactly, yeah.
See Daniel lead off with an Overgrown Tune, Alex on his mulligan with a Blood Crypt. We'll see if either player has a Farseek. It looks like that is what Daniel has. So this is potentially phase 1 of the game here. Daniel trying to get out in front on mana and possibly curve into Thragtusks and Huntmaster of the Fells and Rakdos Returns to try to blow Alex out of the water before he really has an opportunity to get his feet set in the game.
Right. It looks like Alex has plenty of land. Let's see if he has a Farseek to match. Moves the card to the front of his hand. I'm assuming it's a Farseek, unless he's just hanging out. Yep, it is a foil Farseek. And he is now at the same level as Daniel. Looks like the mulligan didn't face him too bad here. We got our necessities, our basic lands that we need here, and to be able to cast all your spells.
Yeah, and mulliganing is also, it always matters to some extent, but in the Jund matchup, the Jund mirror match, there's so many cards that can be worth either explicitly or implicitly 2, 3, 4, 5 cards that a mulligan doesn't necessarily put you out of it.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, a lot of times you'll draw the wrong half of your deck. If you're all Putrefies, Transient Slips, and Pillar Flames, and they're Garruk, you're in trouble.
So we're going to see Like Being Zombie here from Daniel,
man.
which
Hits on
devastating.
Yeah, devastating.
Grabs a Thragtusk, leaving Alex with a hand of just a Putrefy and 3 lands. So,
all right, well, we see the merits of main deck this guy. Technically, it's never dead. It's not like a Sync Collector that's just a 2-1 idiot that does nothing. This card is a 3-1 Intimidate, so even against a lot of decks, he can really beat down an opponent without them being able to handle it.
Yep. No, it is a much more of a real body.
Right, yeah. Looks like he drew another land, so we're rocking here, all land in a Putrefy. But like I said, we're not counting anyone out. I mean, this game can easily go from dire, looking like you can't win. Oh, we do. Never mind. Drew a Scavenging Ooze. Much better than land.
So yeah, Alex looked like he was pretty well set up there with a curve of, well, I can Putrefy a play that he makes on tap and play Thragtusk, but that Life Bane Zombie is devastating there.
Only problem with playing Scavenging Ooze here is the Pillar Flame threat, where if you hold back and go Putrefy into turn, you can kill Life Bane Zombie or whatever creature he plays and have a 3/3 Scavenging Ooze. And a Bonfire for 2 if he does that return here.
So we're going to see a Rakdos Return that's going to, I believe, clear out the remainder of Alex's hand, which we know, and Daniel knows is all lands.
It's all for you. Yep.
Or rather, a Putrefy plus the 2 lands. This keeps, obviously, it's good for a number of reasons. Keeps Alex off of a 5th land to find some of his own haymakers like Thragtusk, and really just pinning down Alex's overall resources to manage the game.
Right. So the Ooze gets in, Alex just kind of tapping some land. It looked like maybe he drew a Farseek, and he did. So we have a 5th land here that opens Alex up to plenty of different outs he could draw. If Daniel is rocking a few spells, though, it's going to be a super uphill battle here.
Well, among the other cards in Daniel's hand is Olivia Voldaren, and Daniel's done a very good job of sculpting the game in such a way with that Rakdos return and the Lightbane Zombie, where he's going to be able to set that up on a fairly stable board.
Right, and then Alex will be pretty hard pressed to draw a removal spell to kill it. He already, obviously, Putrefy is gone. I don't know how many more actual outs he has. It looks like a Mortars and a Dreadbore, so not too many left. And of course the bonfires. And here's the pillar. Obviously, the return would have stopped any argument to hold back Putrefy anyway. He basically would have.
Oh, bonfire!
There
Big
it is.
draw. Big
there
draw
it is.
from Alex.
That's what we need here, right?
Now we're back at parity. That's Haymaker number 1.
Right. So now we need Garrick off the top. Let's make it interesting. I see a black card. Is a Tragic Slip in his hand? And he rips the Thragtusk. That's pretty good. Not a bad draw here.
Essentially a Miracle Thragtusk.
It is a Miracle Thragtusk. It looks like Daniel's holding.
Oh, bonfire.
Another bonfire. We're having a good time today. He just needs to do that every turn for the rest of the game and he'll win. It looks like we have a Todd Anderson Beast token.
I believe that's a turtle.
That's a turtle? The Todd Anderson turtle?
I don't know if Todd Anderson's technically affiliated with the turtle. There's another Thragtusk.
I know he's a beast, so he should be using those tokens.
Alex facing a lethal attack next turn, drawing fairly slim here.
Yeah, it's the Miracle Bonfire was cool until we had a couple Miracle Thragtusk in a row, and then that's going to be it.
So Daniel takes the first game off the back of Alex's mulligan into Daniel's Lightbane Zombie. And the Rakdos return. Daniel did a very good job of just suppressing the total number of resources that Alex had, and even back-to-back Bonfire, the Dams couldn't really keep up with the Thragtusks.
It looks like they both have the same sideboard, so it's going to be. I think it's going to be an almost identical deck because Alex didn't have any Lightbane Zombies on the board, but he's going to bring in 2, which puts him at 2 and 2, same amount. They're both probably going to bring in Liliana the Veil, probably bring in Underworld Connections, maybe Duress. I'm not sure, but I know for a fact that this Rakdos Return is going to be a pretty decent card on the play here for Alex. I would always like 3 return on the play if I'm John.
Yeah, no, and Underworld Connections is a card that's actually gone up quite a bit in my esteem in the last couple months. Before, I questioned it in people's sideboards because Junk Rights / Reanimator, Jund, etc., all these mid-range control-ish green decks were all boarding into a 6-line to fight one another because mana mattered so much.
Right.
And I questioned bringing in Underworld Connections because that's obviously a disaster if that card is hit within a 6-line. There's a lot less of 6-lining going on in the metagame now than there was in the last couple of months, and so I think Underworld Connections is a card that was poorly positioned a little while ago and has become much better in recent times.
Yeah, I think in this scenario, knowing that there is no 6-line in the future for either opponent here, I think you have to come in with the idea that if I draw more cards than you, I'm going to beat you because we have the same cards. So that's kind of the mentality that I would go with here. I don't see them, none of them are going to be playing Rakdos Cackler into Ash Zealot and killing each other quickly. So, barring Farseek and the Huntmaster and the Thragtusk, you're going to have a pretty even back and forth after sideboard.
Yeah, it's another curious dynamic of the Jund Mirror match is sometimes life total is basically irrelevant. The game's all about amassing cards and more total resources. And sometimes the game can be kind of damage racy, particularly the ones that don't involve Thragtusk from either player. Your life total is actually a pretty meaningful resource.
Yeah, you shock yourself pretty often. You're taking damage from those untapped lands. You're also getting hit by flipping Huntmasters and whatnot. The thing is, like you said, a lot of times life is irrelevant because you have 28 total life gain in your deck from 4 Huntmaster, 4 Thragtusk, and then Huntmaster can obviously do more than that. And even Scavenging Ooze, forgot that one. So there's just so many ways to gain life that rarely you're going to see a game end from a beatdown on turn 5 or 6.
Yep. But there are, between Bonfire and Keswick Wolf Run, the decks have a lot of range to punk each other out. Those are ways to kill someone from an otherwise losing position. So, like I said, we have a lot of Jund on camera. It's been a dominant deck in Standard for a very long time. I actually really enjoy watching the mirror match of this deck because depending on the draws of each person, the games can be about very different things from game to game. Over on our other side of the match, Jason Henke is up one game to 0 against Jade Morrow. So that's the other match we're waiting on to fill out the remainder of our topic.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you for liking the Jun mirror. I like playing the Esper mirror. I like watching it. It's fun.
Yeah.
A lot of times I think the mirror match has a lot of intricate lines you take to play. Obviously, I would argue that Esper mirror has a lot more lines than the Jun mirror, just because you have more cards in your hand throughout the game, and obviously it's going to last about 4 times as long. So.
What I kind of mean by different resources is the Esper mirror match is fundamentally about mana. The person who gets out in front of the other person with mana can leverage that advantage in a million different ways. The Jun mirror match is occasionally about mana, but it's also occasionally about life total or board advantage or raw card advantage. It's a lot more fluid. The only weird trump that I ever see in the Esper mirrors is Drown Yard. It's possible I can get out in front of you with mana or cards, but I just never answer your Drown Yard, or you have 2 to my 1, and I can lose from an otherwise pretty dominant position.
Yeah, I think the inclusion of, toward the end of the Esper lifespan anyway, they added Psychic Spiral, which makes it, you can't just Drown Yard. Now it's one of those matchups where sometimes I gotta beat you with some Resto Angels, sometimes I gotta Snapcast you, sometimes I have the Lingering Soul, so I'm playing Sorin, I gotta Planeswalk you, because if you just drown them, their hand is negate Psychic Spiral Snapcaster Mage, you're going to lose the game. Or if you even mill the Psychic Spiral with a 3 or 4 Snapcaster package, and a blink of an eye, boom, my deck's gone. Lose. So, enough about Esper reminiscing. We're going to have plenty of blue-white control talk, I guarantee, after rotation. We'll see a lot of those decks, so that will be back when I thrive here, so we'll see.
Alex will be on the play. Again, last game done in by a mixture of a mulligan and discard.
Mulliganing, Rakdos returning for 3. They usually will do it. No one likes getting Mind Rotted, even limited. In this, it's a lot worse. He sinks his head, Alex does. I don't know if that's a sad sinking there. No, he's fine. We're good.
We're looking at a hand that appears to be lands and spells with no Farseek.
Right. Let's see what Alex can do here. He has a Duress. I like Duress in this a little bit better in the mirror match. There are a lot more targets than we talked about Sync Collector having, because you can hit Liliana and Garrett.
And the magic, yeah, if people are boarding in cards against you, it's almost certainly spells.
Oh, man. All right, so he's not taking the slip, obviously. I think Daniel's hand is pretty bad. I think you obviously take Rakdos Return here, unless Alex's hand is dependent on a Liliana next turn.
Yeah, it's unlikely to assume that I would be surprised to see him take Duress here. He would have to have something very particular he's trying to protect.
Right.
So you see Daniel here choose not to play the Duress on turn 1, which I like. 1, because it allows him to save some of his life total, and secondly, it gives Alex another opportunity to draw a spell on his turn.
I never like Duressing on turn 1, especially even with Appetite. I will wait till turn 3 every time to Appetite for Brains, because you really want to get the value out of it, and whiffing with it is a nightmare. Especially when you're, again, in a mirror match, card-for-card situation. Alright, looks like Daniel will probably be cracking that Duress in now. I mean, I wouldn't be against him holding it again, but then again, there's Underworld Connections and Liliana. He has to Duress him now.
The biggest thing for me, from my perspective, is as you see him take Underworld Connections.
That would have been a disaster if he waited. That would have been...
Well, it looks like he's missing a second black mana, but even still, I think the reason that you get to Duress this turn is because you're casting Lifebane Zombie the following turn, and you don't want to wait until the 4th turn at earliest to Duress. It kind of ties Daniel's hand.
True, yeah. You definitely follow the curve, but like I said, if he would have let that Underworld Connections get out, it is a rough uphill battle from there. Drawing 2 cards a turn is pretty unbeatable.
It's a Scavenging Ooze from Alex and a 3rd land.
Alright, so Lifebane Zombie coming down will be able to...
We know about the presence of
the Huntmaster, I see that.
And the Thragtusk. It's going to have
both. So I think you take Huntmaster here?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what the rest of Daniel's hand looks like.
Doesn't look like we're going to get a peek of that.
It's very likely to be Thragtusk unless he has a second Lifebane Zombie. Then you can talk about curving into it. But Thragtusk is so more meaningful individually.
It is, yeah. I think he's going to take the Huntmaster.
Okay.
I think he has actually a Tragic Slip in his hand, I think. Maybe not. Let's see. It's just a little far back. I do like taking Huntmaster here because potentially if he plays Huntmaster, he passes kill Lifebane Zombie, has a 4/4 and a 2/2. That's much more powerful than hitting a bunch of lands in a row and hitting the Thragtusk.
Yeah, I had to assume based on Daniel's play here, that he has to have something fairly specific in mind for that Thragtusk. I don't know if it involves Rakdos returning away Alex's hand. I don't know if it involves a second Lifebane zombie, but the individual impact of Thragtusk is so much greater that... Here we see a bonfire for 2.
Quickly draws it, almost hits the hand, and he saves it with the flipping it as far as he can away from his hand. I like it. Clearly a miracle.
Land and a passing of the turn.
So here comes Thragtusk. It looks like Alex finally drew a second black, but I don't think he's going to play. Yeah, definitely Thragtusk here is the right play.
So Alex is down to just land in hand, leaning very heavily on this Thragtusk plus whatever the top of his deck has to offer.
Right. Again, Lifebane Zombie, taking a powerful card and then still having 3 power, which is kill Thragtusk, is pretty awesome. Oh man, that is a good draw from Daniel. Alex wants a Kessig Wolfrun here, I think, or maybe
Hellkite would be an excellent draw.
Hellkite would be a good draw. I don't see what he drew. I don't think it was a land. I think it was something.
And Garrick is another powerful
Rakdos Return would be even better, actually, come to think of it. I think he did draw Rakdos Return. Yeah, he did. Woo!
Rakdos Return for 4, presumably being redirected to the Garrick, getting rid of Scavenging Ooze and a Mizium Mortars. And now we are back into our Jund top decking war. Daniel with a slight edge right now as he has a Wolfrun plus an Intimidate creature.
Right.
He can start sending and leave his token back on defense to block or race if Alex decides to attack. But I would say Daniel is a slight favorite from this position.
Yeah, it just shows you the power of these Jund cards. All of them are specifically so good. He drew the one card that, besides one of 2, Bonfire, that which not only put him back in the game, but almost put the board to even. And like you said, he is Wolf running his Intimidate creature. He did not draw a land because maybe he did.
Yeah, I like playing it.
Yeah, definitely. 1 damage is not worth 2 to yourself, definitely.
Alex mulling over his draw.
Even though it would have been a quicker clock, I think. It would have been 3-turn clock, 7/7/7, right?
Ooh,
yeah.
A huge draw. Sever the Bloodline.
Oh man,
huge draw.
That is a monster. Daniel is now top decking. It looks like a Hunt Master of the Fells is coming down.
Yep.
Which now, if Alex draws anything, he's fine because he has the 7th mana for Sever, so he's still okay. So even any draw here is live, even a land here.
So yeah, now we're back in the stage of the game where Jund tries to, each deck is trying to out haymaker one another.
And like I said, here's land, Sever coming, and then sending 3 here. I like holding back here to block the Wolf because he's going to take back more damage and lose this race.
Yeah.
So I definitely would have held back.
Especially since he's already behind on life to begin with.
Right, yeah.
I agree, I would have probably held back there. But the Jund deck has so much removal that it's a little dangerous to try to hang back and assume that you can block because there's so much removal that can be drawn. But the 3 damage doesn't seem that relevant at this stage of the game.
Especially being at 22 life from the Thragtusk. You definitely hold back here. If Daniel draws a removal spell and wastes it on your Wolf, you're not too upset about that. So
no.
You're decent.
Okay. See an attack for 3 powered by an additional point from the Wolf Run and then a Farseek after combat.
I think if Alex whiffs here, I think he has to hold back this turn. He's going to be taking minimum 7 and then maybe 8 if he draws a land here. So I don't know what Alex drew. I know that we need to say go if it's a land. He's thinking, mulling over his options. So it's not a land. It looks like he's organizing.
Mulling over his decisions again. There's so many powerful draws he has to potentially play around here. It's not even clear what he does if he draws a removal spell. He could either use it and try to race or hang back on D and resign himself to trading off his token with Daniel's Wolf.
Yeah, I think if he has a removal spell, I still think he passes here. I think it's pretty important if Daniel draws anything and you use a removal spell on that token, you're going to be regretting it for life. Especially something like Olivia Volderen, which means now that you don't have a removal spell, you can't play any creature or he just takes them all from you. Seeing what's left in each other's decks. Maybe he did draw a removal spell, so he's thinking the same thing you are. If maybe you kill his guy, race. I think he's going to lose this race if he does that.
For being a lot of sorceries and creatures and very top deck heavy, there is still a ton of play to these Jund mirrors. There's a lot of pretty complicated magic going on.
All right, well, that is
Big draw from Alex. Garrett Primal Hunter.
Now here's the question: if he wolf runs over, that's 7 damage, and you can't save Garrett. I think you draw 3 cards here.
It is pretty compelling too. I would be very tempted to do Ancestral here.
Yeah, it's definitely 3 cards here. Yeah, he's making the right decision.
Oh, yeah, I like it.
Because you are just asking for trouble if you pass turn.
So we see a 5-mana Harmonize for Alex.
Another return there. I think I see at least 1 land. Looks like another red card, maybe a Bonfire.
And Rakdos Returns, I believe.
Yeah, I saw the return. I don't know what the other card is. I saw land, return, and X. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a Bonfire. He attacks again, though.
I think if you have drawn a bunch of removal spells, it's way more attractive to try to race.
Now, yeah, if that's a Bonfire in your hand, I completely agree. If it's not, I don't agree here.
Another Farseek. Pretty much the worst draw in Daniel's deck, as it is neither mana that he can sink directly into Wolf Run nor real action.
Think about Alex's actions. Now he's potentially dead to a Bonfire. You know, I don't like attacking both turns. If he didn't attack, oh, there we go.
There's a huge Bonfire from Alex here.
And we know he has a return here, so it looks pretty grim for Daniel at this point. But I don't like being too risky when, again, you have the tools to win here.
Although this is, he has shortened the number of powerful draws that Daniel has by willing to race here.
Right. Well, with the Miracle Bonfire. Without that Miracle Bonfire, then it would have been, a wrap here. And we'll see. It looks like he's going to attack, and then Bonfire return him for 1,000 here. That's about it.
Yep. That is a lethal. Between that and the attack, that is lethal. And we're going on to a 3rd game. Alex, that Garrett Primal Hunter found him plenty of gas to take over a game where he was slightly behind. Daniel was ahead on mana and on Wolf Runs, but those back-to-back Farseek draws were suddenly really bad for Daniel. I think any non-Ravnica dual land is fine because you're just sinking into your Wolf Run. Any of your 4 or 5 mana spells are powerful because they're all very impactful. Those Farseeks on back-to-back turns were the worst draws Daniel had in the deck, and that gave Alex the breathing space necessary to find Garrick and then a couple lethal spells to chain together.
And think about Scavenging Ooze as a potential draw also. How big would that have been? That would have been a gigantic creature. It's so interesting looking at these decks that their top deck possibilities are endless. A lot of times you're in top deck mode, you're like, man, I need X, I need Y, I need Z. You have like 3 outs that you want. And in this deck, it's like 20. There's like 20 different cards you can draw. More than that, the whole deck minus Farseek is a really, really potent draw in that situation.
Yeah, it almost makes me feel, I was talking with Glenn a little bit about this, almost makes me feel like I would want to add, if anything I would want to change about the Jund deck, it would be to add more mana and then another Wolf Run and possibly a Mutable or something like that, because the games where I see Jund look pretty anemic involve them not having Farseek, and they have 4 mana and they go, here's my 4 mana spell. Yeah. Here's my 4 mana spell. Cast a Putrefy on your guy. They're only playing 1 thing a turn. When Jund actually just makes all of its land drops and plays reasonably powerful stuff and has all of its powerful draws, it seems very challenging for the deck to lose. So if anything, I would want to take more of a page out of Sphee's playbook and have more mana and more things to sink mana into.
And it looks like the other match, Jade Morrow won game 2, so they're going to game 3. We have a game on both sides here, pretty good here. Yep. Like you said, back to the Mutable point, they used to run 1 Cavern, so I can see them running 1 Mutable. It doesn't seem like it would hurt too bad. They don't run Arbor Elves in either of these builds, so it's not like you can really damage yourself with a Mutable in the opener. Again, it's a greedy 3-color deck, but 1 colorless land won't kill them there, or a 3rd colorless land won't kill them.
I would just be wanting to put in more lands.
Oh, literally just add more. What would you cut?
Literally add more lands. I don't know, you have a couple maybe redundant removal spells you can play around with. Depending on the metagame, you don't necessarily want, 3rd Olivia / 3rd Scavenging Ooze, or maybe a little metagame specific. You have some removal spells that you don't necessarily need a full allotment of. It's more of theory crafting than actually playing in practice, and that answer is pretty metagame specific. But just more as a broad strokes thing, when the Jund deck has a lot of mana and things to sink its mana into, you get into those spots where every draw that you have is insane. Lands are good and spells are good.
Right. Yeah, because we're at 25 land with 4 Farseek, but like you said, it's not like drawing a lot of land is going to hurt you with 5 X-Spells in your deck, plus 2 Wolfram, which is pretty much like 7 X-Spells in your deck.
Yep.
Olivia is almost an X-Spell too against creatures. Scavenging Ooze for some part is also pretty beastie with a bunch of land out. And of course, Garrett Primal Hunter drawing cards and having tons of mana out allows you to drop every card you draw that turn. So.
And you see Reed's list, and Alex has also incorporated the 1 copy of Rakdos Keyrune. Is also sort of what I'm talking about. Is a mixture between a mana source and action.
Right.
Whether or not that's better than having, say, another Wolf Run or having a Mutavault is a different question, but it's already pretty standard for these decks to have a 26 mana source because of that 1 Keyrune.
Yeah. I'm glad a lot of people aren't playing that Keyrune. It's a pretty big nuisance back in the day.
Does a reasonable job at fighting over Thragtusks, so that's the thing that matters, because 3 power per striker. So both players keep 7. Daniel leads with an Overgrown Tomb. Stomping Ground for Alex. No Farseek from Daniel.
I see the Farseek from Alex coming here.
And Alex now jumping ahead on mana.
Alex is definitely happy about having his Farseek early on. Daniel knows there's 4 more to be drawn later in the game, and like you said, when you get to this even board state, that's pretty much the last card you want to see.
So Daniel already...
I see multiple Thragtai in Alex's hand. Obviously a pretty powerful card in this matchup. I think I see a Return being flicked by too. I see Thrag, Return, Scavenging Ooze, I think I see, for the spells in Alex's hand.
And Daniel with no 3rd land drop.
Oh, man. Another, I don't know if you can keep hands. We talked about this earlier. I used to not mulligan ever, and I paid the ultimate price many times for it. At this point in my life, I think if you are Jund and you have 2 land, without a Farseek in your hand, it's a mulligan.
And you see Alex really pull ahead on mana here with a Rakdos Keyrune, a 4th land, and a Farseek. So now he has a bunch of 5 mana spells in his hand. He has a Kessig Wolf Run left over. He has a lot of meat to work with.
Alex is, guys, the eye of the tiger right now. He's a player, a local player. I know the guy. Nothing real accomplishment based yet, so he is really juicing to win this one, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Daniel rips not a land but a Farseek.
And if Alex does have that Rakdos Return, it's going to be for all but 1 card here.
I mean, he may want to advance his board a little bit.
Right. I mean, there's no need to do it now. I just know the grim truth is coming if he does have one.
Yes.
It's just going to be a disaster.
Ladies and gentlemen, the standard open.
Alex patiently waiting. He's chomping at the bit to untap here.
Think about this play, though. If you wait, say he has 6 cards in his hand and you wait, and he keeps, and you just say go, and he goes 4th land Thragtusk, and now you can do it for his whole hand. Would it have been better to use it? He only has, or not, Huntmaster. He only has a Huntmaster's hand, and now he has to actually rip a 4th land and do anything.
Well, I think that Daniel has 7 cards in his hand. So
7 or 6? I can't.
Well, he missed his.
Oh, he did.
And drew Farseek,
right.
so you're only getting him down to 2 cards.
Never
in
mind.
hand.
Never mind. Yeah. If he has 6 cards, though, I kind of like that play. But it looks like Alex is tapping 2. Is he going to Keyrune his opponent? He is.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see some Keyrune beatdowns and probably a Huntmaster post combat would be my guess.
Yeah, that would definitely be good here. He definitely has that at least a Huntmaster because we know he has double Thragtusk. There's no reason to attack with that Keyrune if he has no Huntmaster play.
Try to squeeze in a little bit of damage while Daniel is missing land drops.
Right.
I don't know if I would like that play without the Wolf Run, but with Wolf Run in play, the incremental points of damage are really important. So.
Right. And especially Huntmaster likes Wolf Run. They get along very well because usually you spend your whole turn feeding mana into it and attacking, and then avoiding.
There's a Lifebane zombie that's going to knock out one of the 2 Thragtusks.
All right, we're going to see a token go into the red zone here. I think. I'd be surprised if he sent Huntmaster in as well. He actually has enough mana to activate Keyrune and send both Keyrune and token in.
Yes.
Would you rather flip Huntmaster here and kill Lifebane Zombie, or do the Keyrune Wolf, play Thragtusk, flip it next turn?
I would I would attack with the Key Rune, and with Keswick Wolf Run in play, every point of damage you can get in right now is really important. The Wolf Run play is a little more dangerous because if he has a removal spell to stop it, you've kind of taken a turn off and maybe giving him the breathing space he needs to get his hand online. You gotta. Alex is now a little light on action. He's got to capitalize and try to finish this game off while Daniel is still choked on action.
And if he draws Bonfire here, you kind of blowing yourself out as well. I like to have the Thragtusk on the board, especially with only 3 land out. His Bonfire Miracle is definitely less scary in that
So he's going to take a different path here and simply pump into the Wolf Run and then flip the Huntmaster on the upkeep.
All right, so he's going to go with the other play. Let's see if he has a removal spell. He does not. So now at the 4/4 size, Daniel is now down to a few outs here because he's at 9 life, which makes Key Rune attack for 7 by itself. And
yep. Daniel choked on a hand of 4 and 5 mana spells, and
I think Daniel's kicking himself now. You never feel good when you keep your opening 7 and then don't play a spell for pretty much the entire beginning of the game.
I think
you
Daniel's
just
hand is
you just ship those hands.
I think Daniel's hand there is a pretty straightforward mulligan. If you had 2 lands with all 3 colors of mana, it's a lot. It's a different conversation. I probably still don't like the keep, but keeping Overgrown Tomb with no Farseek, you're on the play. Your first 3 draw steps have to be so good for you to be able to play a competitive game.
Yeah, even in that scenario, at least 2 land, because all you have is Lifebane Zombie. That's not going to cut it against a full mana ramping multiple threat. And think if you had the Rakdos Return there, you really need to hit your land drops in order to actually get stuff out of your hand in order not just to get destroyed by that card.